What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another tournament breakdown presented by Midway USA. And we're going to break down how I caught the bass I did, how I approached the Bassmaster Classic, breaking down Fort Loudon and Tellico, two completely different fisheries that are connected down at the dam by a man-made canal that is built. And they're completely different because Loudon kind of runs out of like agriculture, farm country, and then Tellico comes out of the mountains. And so it's much more clean, it's colder water. You get all the way up to the Chilawi Dam and the water's still in the 40s. You be down on Loudon, the water's in the upper 50s, right? So you're talking a 10-degree temperature swing, and you're talking, 8, 9, 10 foot of visibility versus Loudon with maybe 6 inches to a foot of visibility. So completely different fisheries, and I spent time on both, kind of mixing it up. Kept my bait choices fairly simple for this event, and the water was super low, lower than we've ever seen it for an event there. And they hadn't had a lot of rain, they hadn't brought it up, or even started to think about bringing it up until right at the event. We kind of had an influx of water that brought in some dirty water, and we all thought that it was really going to push a lot of fish shallow, and that didn't seem to be the case, but there were some fish shallow, and so a lot of my bait choices kind of revolved around that. And it was heavy pre-spawn, and I felt like, fishing specific isolated cover, whether it was rock or wood, was going to be my best case scenario. And so what I ended up doing is having an approach with 2 different crankbaits and a jig. That's pretty much what I did. And the first one was a Megabass Sonic side. I threw that one quite a bit. You can see it's still got a little bit of clay on the bill there left over. I was burning that in little transition places, right, where it'd go from like bigger chunk rock to maybe a pea gravel, or where it goes from like gravel to clay. And then also, just targeting some riprap banks and things like that with that one. And that's been a killer springtime bait. It's a flat side bait, that's real skinny, does well in that cold water, a real tight vibration. That's why it gets that Sonic side name. And then it can cast really well. That's what I like, is I can still cast it around targets, and it deflects well. A lot of flat side crankbaits don't deflect very well, but this one deflects well. And so I'm spending less time being hung up, which is super important. You're much more efficient that way. Line choice, I was throwing this on 12-pound Seagar Tatsu. Just kind of allows that bait to get down into the proper depth. I feel like that lighter line, a 12-pound, allows that bait to have a little bit more action than if you threw it on a heavier pound test. And then throwing it on the Daiwa Zillion SV. Absolutely love this reel for any moving baits, crankbaits, chatterbaits, things like that. Usually you wouldn't think of that with the SV spool, but that hyperdrive system that they have in this makes it incredibly smooth. And then my favorite cranking rod, the Alpha Angler Rebound, 7 foot, medium heavy, but 100% glass. So you've got a really parabolic action to that, allows it to load up. Soft tip, that's really important, cold water, because you've got that lighter line, light hooks, and those fish, they're not super aggressive. They've got soft mouths, and they come up and they kind of just mush on the bait, and you want that rod to be able to load, but then have enough power to get those fish away from the cover. Then when I was targeting some riprap, maybe a little bit deeper riprap, and then also I was fishing some isolated rock piles, these places that I would find on these big flats, right? You'd have a mud flat, and then you'd have isolated kind of this shelf table rock mixed with some gravel. I was throwing the Megabass Eye by Eye shad in the type 3, so a tiny little 1/4 ounce crankbait, but it has the LBO system in it. And so what that does is it allows this 1/4 ounce bait to fly. You can cast it super, super well on a bait caster, which I love, right? Kind of those Shad Rap style baits that you don't have to throw on a spinning rod. So I can still have the power and control with a bait caster that way. Also throwing that on 12-pound Seaguar Tatsu. I probably could have went all the way down to 10, but I didn't need to get it down that deep. So fishing it on 12-pound Tatsu, pretty much the exact same setup as the Sonic side. Daiwa, Zillion, TWSV, and throwing it on an Alpha Angler Rebound. So super simple as far as setups go. 2 different crankbaits, you know, and I felt like mixing it up with the 2 different craw patterns. That was really based on water clarity. So when I was in the dirtier water, I would fish kind of the reddish, orangish craw patterns. When I got in that cleaner water, that matte green seemed to shine a little bit better. All right, I just felt like it was a little bit more natural, a little bit more kind of toned down and muted versus just the bright red and orange colors. And then the biggest fish I caught during the Classic, man, in an area that I thought that I could do really, really well in and maybe even have a shot to win. And it's done this to me in the past where the water just cleans up and it gets a lot tougher, and the crankbait bite got tougher over there. And so what I ended up doing was actually picking up a jig. I hand tied this the week of the Classic. Just felt like this color matched the watercolor really well. Was kind of natural, but had a few little orange hues in it and brown hues in it, and then put an X-Zone Rebel chunk on there. So it's a 3/8 ounce jig, pretty bulky skirt, and then that Rebel chunk allows it to fall really slow, which to me is important in the early spring when you've got these cold, lethargic bass. They're kind of just getting up there. First thing, you get that first warming trend, and they're not very aggressive. And that slow fall, and then that jig just hits and kind of spreads out, that's gonna trigger that bite. And I ended up catching almost 5-pounder on that on day one. That kind of saved my day because I was really struggling. But got that on 22-pound Seaguar Tatsu. It's my favorite flipping line, favorite fluorocarbon for kind of fishing around cover in those heavy situations. Alpha Angler hitter, 7.6, heavy action rod, plenty of tip to be able to throw a 3/8 ounce jig, and plenty of backbone to get him out of those laydowns and brush and things like that. And then the Daiwa Tatula Elite PF, you've heard me talk about that reel a bunch of times over the years since they came out with it. A phenomenal flipping reel, you know, just bigger handles, bigger knobs, different braking system that allows you to be able to make more accurate and lighter and softer casts when you're pitching and flipping. So overall, a fun event. The Classic was amazing. It was record-breaking numbers. Obviously wish we would have been able to have a better event finish-wise, but it was really cool to be there, see all those people, all the fans. Some of you may have even been there. So appreciate all of you guys. Make sure you guys check all this stuff out on midwayusa.com, and we'll catch you on the next one.